Risk Officer at Reliance Life Insurance. Ulgere, who is the Senior Director at Oracle Financial Services. Over to our co-presenters.
I think to the organizers for inviting once again, and thanks to all of you for being back again once again. We'll try to make it as interesting as possible. If at any time you feel you need to add any views, please feel free to do so. If at any time you feel you disagree with us, please feel free to do so. If any time you feel you need to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. So, the session before tea, we just found out that probably audit procedures that we have is not good enough, which means the only logical conclusion is we have to change the audit approach. And therefore, audit approach is changing as the times we live in, and it's evolving. And there is no correct, wrong, ideal, theoretically right procedures or approaches. It's all customized to client. When I joined one of the French client, he took out a Swiss watch and said, Sundar, I want you to run the bank like this Swiss watch. I want absolute perfection, accuracy. And people used to jump. Whenever he used to come in a corridor also, we used to hide. We are a procedure man, Sundar procedure. So we used to have procedures, so many procedures, unbelievable. And we had a big fight coming in to write only procedures. So that was the kind of bank. And then we had a fiasco, ALM disaster there. And I wonder what went wrong. And I did a root cause analysis. Just not that systems and processes are enough, because complexities were there. Like one of the deposits that we took, there's a political problem because the interest rates were up. And so it was easily sellable in the market. So whatever you take at 8%, people were lending out at 13, 14. Suddenly, whole market changed. They were started lending at 7, 8. Market became tough. And so those deposits which were taken at 10, 9, 10, it was a hot potato. Commercial said, I will not touch it, you give me a better rate. Treasury said, this is your bought. You got the deposits, you keep it. Why are you asking me? They didn't hedge. And I was again CRO at the epicenter of the earthquake or whatever, the crisis, and didn't know what to do. I had escalated it to Paris, and luckily some sense prevailed, and we started slowly edging it, and we did some kind of risk management. So moot point is that sometimes you will feel client is great, is so control oriented, culture is great, may not be. Another culture that I went, they were very clear, Sundar, we want to be practical. And so you use practical approach, be pragmatic. We want you to value add. So that's another culture. Sometimes I felt it was a cowboy culture. Everything went, fast. And like you come to the office and you look at the Outlook calendar and then you filled up till say 7 o'clock. And then you start working at 7. Tough exercise. But things were very fine, in terms of controls, reporting, audit reporting culture, standards, performance, KPIs, areas, risk assessments, unbelievable. The auditees were very mature, very robust. So, this is another environment. So, there is no perfect environment, there is no perfect approach, and therefore, you have to be dynamic as a professional, as a specialist. This is what we thought we would highlight. This is a 2012 survey, and nearly a quarter of respondents said management's level of involvement in governance is low. 22% of the organizations have experienced a security breach in the last 12 months. 52% said they don't have enough IT staff, and 47% have incurred unexpected costs due to an IT related problem or incident in the last year. Data leakages is among the top hot button security challenges. 49% of the enterprises will be increasing investments in IT over the next 12 months, and more than half of responding enterprises use a governance framework. But if you look at figures, this is US based survey, but it's so true to even our context, Indian context. And some of the things I could easily relate to. in the environment that we live. It's not that it's all out and out US. Let's look at the emerging kind of challenges. Let's look at database security. What do we have in that? We have customer data, personal information of the client, financial data and intellectual property, and employee information. And you look at a Verizon business study 2010, and I would say even relevant today, 25% of breaches involve database servers. 92% of all breaches are due to database breaches. Although sophisticated attacks constitute 15% of the total attacks, which means 85% is unsophisticated, 87% of database record breaches were due to sophisticated attacks. Then do we have sophisticated auditing? That's the next question. How many of us do audit of databases? We do audit of applications, we do audit of operating system or infrastructure or network through specialists when we do not have staff, but probably we don't do database audit. Specialized database audit, yeah, sorry. Awareness is an issue.
Any such diagnostics are very much in the hands of IT security guys or IT infrastructure guys or technical guys or development guys. I mean, not with auditors.
Yeah, practical point. Of course, but it's not that auditors don't do. When I was Intel audited, we did layer by layer. So we did database, network.
No, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That maybe
you may not have this kind of information.
Yeah, so that depends upon the person. For example, in case if let's say I do audit, and I'm a technical guy, so I do it, but maybe it's not a standard.
Absolutely, that's a fair point. And therefore, we need to hire technical specialists like you, definitely, in the audit team. Otherwise, it's a disaster. Similarly, you look at perimeter-based data security, it doesn't protect abusing of permissions by super user, audit log tampering of the super user. I remember doing one penetration or kind of eavesdropping or kind of what do you call it, ethical hacking. I don't know, those words are contrary to each other. And we found out audit logs were tampered actually. And leaving backdoor infrastructure code, hackers often aim to gain privileged status. And so privileged users are also exploited. They themselves do it or through outsiders. And you have problems even with the regular users. Regular behavior goes undetected. Network scanning doesn't happen or doesn't detect the exploits of regular users. Password attacks don't get detected. So these kind of problems exist with just tool-based approach. You buy a tool and you think you are done, and probably you are not done. So what is required is a swifter and a proactive vulnerability audit. Patch management process should be reviewed. I remember when I was in one of the banks, ING, Microsoft, who were our service provider, used to announce the patches 1 month before. I asked them, why are you doing it 1 month before you're going to launch the patch? No. The moment we launch, the hackers are up. And our clients start sleeping. That's where the smiling answer. Oh my God. So we said, okay, so that's why we announce 1 month before, talk to our clients in mobile, slowly give them, we don't even use email sometimes, quietly give it, so that they implement, and then after 1 month we announce the patch or vulnerability. So that was a good idea, and then of course that awakened our, then we started doing router patch management, then the other patch management, operating system patch management, network patch management, all patches we need to be very careful. Database configuration audits, again, not many auditors, as you rightly pointed out, do that. Continuous monitoring of these accesses, centralized management of data. Most companies have centralized management of database servers or databases. How do they do it? What's the process? Who does the audit? What are the routine scans that they do? What are the compliance requirements? Especially CIDSS and SOX both have laid down requirements. And of course, nothing would help but comprehensive risk-based audit. And I remember, especially in banking, you must do the core banking database audit. It's a must. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add something, since you're touching from a banking perspective. Though we are not directly going and doing an audit of the bank, how they are doing the implementation, so I'm talking from a Oracle perspective. Because let us say a bank is having Oracle suite of products, It could be Oracle database and core banking solution, etc. there. In one of the things, the way we are doing, the approach is, the comprehensive risk-based audit. It talks about like having an audit charter, means what will be my audit charter for this year and what is my audit scope. In that audit scope, you can define what all you want to do. So usually the audits are done in the way, you get a list of projects and then you look into a threshold which are high risk areas and then select some projects, because either you go 100% audit, means 100% coverage, or you go 40% or 50% depending upon situation. So in that you can think of like what are the areas I will do. So one could be like, you are looking from only a delivery or consulting organization level, or you are looking also from the support functions, we call it as like legal, HR, facility management group, etc. Okay. So the database audits, etc., they come as a part of your delivery or consulting organization, what all you can do in that. So here we want to, as rightly said by Sundar, we want to build those skills which are required. The audit group should have specialized skills from the business knowledge. The second is the technology. If you are having a resources of like that, then it will be very helpful for you to do it. So just to share you one of the example, I was in one of the client place in Middle East for one of the internal health check, means we want to go and customer get feedback. And after talking to him 10 minutes, he said, why can't you go and visit our data center? It was not in my audit scope. I was asking his feedback and how do we perform, are we delivering as per our contract for implementing a core banking solution. So he said, I will make you can go to our data center and then can you come and give me some feedback. I said, okay, I will do out of its scope, you can't quote me, and it is just, we will do it. So I went there, and after traveling like 40 miles from the main city, like the way you are having your SEEPs in Mumbai, they are all like big sheds kind of thing, which have been converted as data centers. And we went and we said, we are coming from audit group of Oracle. The security guard just permitted to go inside without having any logs, who we are. He didn't ask us, show me your identity card, nothing. We went there. Then we introduced ourselves and then we sat with them. We asked them, can we come into your data center and see how it is? The guy took. Absolutely, absolutely. So it is called as, like how you perceived the risk and exposure is very important. Do you want to go by a check-based audit approach, or you want to look into the risk of the organization, and which are those areas I would like to cover is very, very important. So if you keep that as your benchmark or your approach, I think definitely we can succeed. Thanks, Sundar.
Thanks. Again, another area of emerging concern is outsourcing, and sometimes you begin to wonder it's a boon or a bane. Case in point is Standard Chartered. I was with Standard Chartered working in group audit, and I had a chance to audit the same place, New York.
Okay.
And luckily I did the audit in 1999. I was so worried when I saw the headlines. I haven't spoken to anybody else yet. Now when I'm caught up with my colleagues, ex-colleagues there still. But when I saw the issue, it's a big issue. Now I don't know, because OFAC screening is something very basic, and Standard Chartered is such an organization. It's so good. I mean, I had a 1-2 day induction on just on money laundering and compliance and know your thing, know your limits, know your law, know your local environment, KYC. I mean, excellent controls, processes, induction, training programs. And when you look at the audit issues in the newspaper, it talks about some 1,000 odd people in Chennai not getting OFAC training. 1. 2 is Iran transactions were not disclosed. Now when I was there was no such Iran transaction, luckily. But having said that, I'm sure those regulators who did the inspections there were aware of these transactions. This is wire stripping, as they call it, is what they don't do it actually. To respect the country, they don't do it they do it off the wire, and it's done in Chennai. And so I'm sure there are several lawyers who have gone through this agreement and structuring and all that stuff. But somebody has taken a wrong call. I'm not saying Standard Chartered is right, US is wrong, or US is right, or Standard Chartered is, we don't know who's right, who's wrong. But the case in point is, you've taken a wrong call, you've taken a wrong interpretation, and probably you haven't kept regulators at bay, or whatever. Or is there a political problem? Suddenly Obama and elections, and there is a major, it against the outsourcing, and they want to hit all these players who did outsourcing. We don't know the facts. And sometimes risks like this are very, very frightening. $300 million fine. I mean, entire profit they have made in lifetime get wiped off if 2 more regulators come now. Because there are other regulators who were audited earlier, they're going to come back and eat the bank. And so you excellently run bank, very savvy, every pie to pie they would have saved. And they would have fought hard to establish the shop in Chennai, and you find it in trouble. So we don't know what kind of risks could hit you. That's the frightening part of outsourcing. Added to that, of course, is the routine outsourcing that we see, which is where you give accesses to your core systems to the employees of outsourced company, whether adequate background check is done, whether again, is it an offshore outsourcing or on-source outsourcing? And I believe there are several reports, maybe bit dated, but still they say that outsourcing is going to go up. Because simple logical reasoning is that sheer cost, sheer bottom line, sheer strategic outsourcing still makes sense. And you still need to outsource, especially in Europe and US. So there are lots of considerations, which I also mentioned. The specialization is number one aspect. I mean, the competencies available in this great country is humongous. And so at a gigantic level, if you have competent people in this country, why not outsource it to this country? That's the logic. And then, of course, quality of product or service. Cost is very important, no doubt. And need for specialized capability. So outsourcing sometimes gives you a scale. And of course, it requires high risk management. I know it is a very high risk area and needs lots of attention. And you need to look at strategic risk management. And you want to add some points? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is we are taking from ISACA guidelines how we can do this. The way we can approach internally is like you can look into top 10 areas or categories where actually you would like to rate any project. Correct? It could be a development project, or it could be a consulting project, or it could be an outsourced project. So you can identify your own parameters and you would like to judge it, okay, and have what kind of risk rating you would like to have. It could be weighted average or it could be generic. So for example, we have done in our organization, let us say for a consulting projects, you are doing a consulting services, you can look into what kind of governance model implemented, means having a steering committee between the customer and the bank, okay. The secondly, it could be on the technology what you are adopting, what kind of project management activities you are planning. The other two important is the legal and contracts, we call it as. Means, is there any service level agreements with the customer, and if there is a breach, how much is the penalty? Means, have you taken into account the penalties for a project? Tomorrow, we have to write it off. What will be our margins at the end of the project if penalty is actually claimed by the customer? Or are you doing any project, we call it as work at risk. Means, we are starting a project in anticipation of sales closing the deal and getting the signature. You may start today with 100 days, we will say, no, it's coming, we will start with 100 days. But suddenly even after 2 months, 3 months or 4 months, the signature doesn't come from, contract is not signed. What happens? Your work at risk goes on increasing, and if it is in a development project, the customer will never sign you the requirement sign-offs in the beginning. So what will happen? You have to do a lot of rework because you already moved from requirement stage to a design phase and you go forward. So the work at risk will help you, to manage that work at risk as a policy in the organization, to see that the work at risk helps you to manage your exposure on one side. You should not really make the sales guys to negotiation power comes down. Means you have to agree with what are the terms and conditions customer starts dictating. So we need to do a balance between the two when you are looking at starting a project without the customer signature. The other two will be the user adoption, means we call it as how the user is perceiving this transformation from IT to a business angle. If you see, at least I can say 70% of the projects are actually driven by IT, whereas business may not be interested to do it. We have seen some projects which are going like 1 year under user acceptance testing. Means business will say, I will do the business, and whenever I get in the evening, like after 4 o'clock, I will come and do the testing of the application. And it goes on and on, but if you are in a fixed price contract, you will be losing your money actually. We'll lose our margins. So we have to, you can define your own parameters we call it as categories of risks, and then evaluate them, and this helps you to risk them like high, medium or low, and then we can go by projects, categories, or it can go by support functions. We can have different parameters. Yeah.
So there are lots of elements of risk management. You could look at due diligence, you could look at record keeping, you could look at, and one of the case in point is even the contracts. Legal contracts is so dicey. I remember one of the contracts we had with a software provider. Actually the company was with a different legal entity, and then there was some merger, demerger, takeover, associate company changed. Everybody forgot to change the contract. And people thought, since everything is going fine, and suddenly one more merger happened. Then suddenly the vendor said that this is a different entity, you have to pay me the license again. Now, how do you take gunshots with the vendor? Software. Because your software is like, it's a spouse. It's a partner. You can't live without the spouse, or you can't live without a software. It's as crazy as that. If, especially in a bank, the core banking software provider tells you, I'll remove my software and go, what would you do? It's just not possible for the bank to work. And this is what it's a risk that you must consider. Therefore, you will have to pay a lot of attention to such contracts. Things might go well one day, but who knows, something can go wrong some other day. And so these are things which are very, very risky and dicey. So risks are plenty. You need to look at analysis of performances, customer issues, personal issues, which is background of people involved, proactive crisis prevention, contingency planning, fallback plan. In fact, regulator actually clamped down on outsourcing of NAV calculation, especially in the insurance domain. One of the logic that the regulator said was, everybody seems to be outsourcing to the same company. All the insurance players. There is no way. Stop this and built in capabilities inside. Now we all argued that world over it's outsourced. What do you want to, and even in your colleague or the co-panelist or the industry which is near to you, which is securities market, they also outsource. So what do you want to, so they said no, nothing doing. Insurance is a different game. It's a long term and we want core capability within the company. So, and these are things which you must consider. Long-term strategic considerations are also important.
Yeah, just I want to add here, I was doing one of the audit of a BPO firm. So if you do in BPO, you are doing, two kinds of services. One is voice, and this could be data. So we had a confidentiality agreement, so which is very, very important. Means the data is not, actually you hook on to the customer database, using your connectivity, and then you do everything and come back. So one of the confidential clause said, nothing should be made available, or the people should not have any mobile phones or any device where they can capture the screens and make it available to our competitors. Actually, we never thought how this can really happen. We wanted really aware this control is in place or not. So what I did was actually in this audit, I called the project manager. So you please come with me. We went to another cabin. We sat there. I asked him, who are the people working? There are 50 people working. I just choose 2 employees who are working in this shift. I asked him to give their mobile numbers, and we called. The first call which went, actually, it went to the guy. He said, hello. I said, I am a HR consultant. We are starting a new BPO here. Are you interested to, come to an interview? That is the way, we asked this question. And he said, now I am in duty. I can't come up to like 8 o'clock. If you want me, I can come after 8, or I can come tomorrow. Okay. Then we ended up, okay, this is the number, you can call us back, left it. Actually, I'm looking at the control, not really doing a HR consultancy role there, but we acted as a HR consultant to get the information from him. And afterwards, there is a security guard who is sitting, to see that everybody drops their telephone and goes it every day and day out, but how can it still happen? He is having his mobile inside. So then we said this control is not working. Okay. Hence, you have to think, which are those 2 areas which will tomorrow, is going to adversely affect. For example, there is a breach of contract. We were in one of the bank in US in San Francisco. There is a service level that after 1 hour, if there is a showstopper in the banking application happens, it has to be fixed in 1 hour. That is the clause. The guy who is on leave today, he went for some problem at home, he went actually, and there was alert means there is a problem, he has to give a fix. He shared his password with another guy who sat and we fixed that particular patch and gave it. The banking application had such a facility, it is a user but with a password of the same thing happened, but they were able to trace that it has not been done by the same laptop which was given to X, it was done by Y. Means they were able to find out from which laptop it was used, and there is a breach of contract because password is shared. Though it is done in a good intention, but what happened? It became a breach of contract, and there was we have to explain everything and say it's happened, it will not happen in future, everything. So hence we have to see from both in risk and exposure angle how it is happening. Okay. Hence when you are doing your audits, please see which are out of, let us say 10 risks are there, which are those 2 important risks which are going to affect my reputation and customer confidence level or getting new business. If you look from a business angle, then do your audit, you are adding value to the business. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks. So there are several disadvantages also, like management control you might lose. I again remember one more client where everything was with the outsourced vendor, but it was told, I don't want to name the software company.
Yeah, we will not take the names of the banks or
but
anything.
-- run bank branch. So you can imagine if that is the state of affairs, how it will be. Everything was with him. There was a guy, so if anything happens, brand manager will call that engineer. And that engineer will come running and he will do some programming there only and change the server, and then that's done. So there is no version control. So branch X used to have one software, branch Y used to have another software. This was during, of course, 2001 and 2. Now with all this core banking and centralized, much of the risks is taken care of. But if you still go to some of the nationalized banks, you still have these risks there. So there could be issues. Of course, they have good manual controls or contingency plans. There could be problem with quality in case of the outsourcing provider that doesn't have proper processes. So how you do your QC, QA of outsourcing vendor? What is the time given? What are the hidden costs and legal problems? I explained one more legal issue earlier. Bankruptcy of the service provider. Again, how many people do the escrow arrangements of softwares, if any? Is a question point. I mean, many organizations go for escrows. Again, what seriousness the escrows have gone? Is there escrow service providers have 2 kinds of contracts. One is they just keep the tape, they don't even check it. Other is they run the tape, they see the controls, then they charge you more. See, these are the things that are very, very important. It's better to use that service because having spent some money, it's better to spend some more money and get the service done. And to see whether the DLLs are okay, the software can run, etc., etc., etc.
Other process. I mean, what I understand is that definitely we can check for those points, but aren't we supposed to check those points as part of the disaster recovery or other such controls that the company
depends,
may have?
Again, which audit you look for. I mean, you can do it as part of audit X or audit Y. At the end of the day, these are risks staring at you. You'll have to plan it out. Supposing it's an assignment very specific, you'll have to, of course, restrict yourself to the scope in. But if it's, assignments are never so specific, I've seen in life. They expect you. The stakeholder will come and tell you, oh, I thought we gave this audit to your company, why you didn't take care of this? And then you are in a danger.
But then question arises is that how, in case if we are not following any such process in place, the back end, then aren't we having that risk of missing out on something or the other things?
Just to add here, I think, I don't know how many of you have really implemented and looking at the contract for every project. Means, what are the key contracts of a particular, business, the line of business. For example, if it is a BPO, I will always ask, for doing your audit, I will ask what is the first get the copy of the contract. That is a master service agreement, we call it as. And then you go for like a statement of work or ordering document, or it could be work order kind of things. So you have the master service agreement will talk about under an umbrella, what are the clauses are there. Escrow will come as a part of the main one, for example, or confidentiality, or breach of contract, disclosures, everything. So if you look into the contract first and then plan it, if there are multiple n number of projects under contract, then you will understand, you know, where all I should see what extra
No,
things.
my point here was on two bases. Like, I really understand your point. Contracts are very important because that defines the working of an organization for in a particular conditions. But at the same point of time, I think it should go with hand in hand with the processes, which is very important, because then in that case, I'm ensuring that though contract is something which is a subset